recording done? Started?
It started.
Excellent, thank you. All right, so we have a great, I think it's a show today. It's all about Eirini, so it's gonna be fun. But we usually get started with, you know, the CFF update and obviously the PMCs. So let's first give a chance to Swarna or anybody in the CFF to give us an update, because we have a summit coming in a few weeks. So this is very exciting.
Yeah, I'm here.
Hey, hi. Good to see you.
Yeah, good to see everyone as well. I don't have a whole lot of updates other than, yes, we are counting down to Summit in a few weeks. The only thing I wanted to mention are, if you still are not registered and if you are a current or a past contributor, let me know. I can share the code again so that you can register as a contributor. We have pretty many Day Zero activities with Contributor Summit, User Day, hackathon, all these kind of awesome events. So please do let me know if you're not sure of any of those events. The unconference folks are looking for filling 2 more slots, as I know, as I understand. So if you have a particular talk or a speaking proposal that you would like to propose to the unconference, please do reach out to the unconference organizers. We also have project-specific swag on our online store. So if you go to Cloud Foundry online swag store, you will see project-specific t-shirts and stickers like Bosch, Eirini, and Quarks. So if you are interested in ordering any of those and get them shipped to the venue, to the event venue, you can do that. Just drop me a note privately on the instructions. There's a separate way you have to order so that you don't have to pay for shipping if you're getting it shipped to the event itself, to the Netherlands. So other than that, I don't have a whole lot, but if any of you have any questions on Summit in general or anything that the foundation folks can help answer, let me know. I'll be here through the call.
Excellent, thank you, Swarna. Yes, we have, as Swarna mentioned, there's also the hackathon. We'll be running this, so if you have ideas and you want to help, you want to participate, please do so. As you'll see in the Eirini extension, there's probably tons of potential hacks to be done, to be had, and to be worked on there. So just seeding ideas here. Okay, any question from anybody, community? You get a chance to ping Swarna right live. No? Okay, fair enough. So I see you in the Hagues, I guess. All right, so for project updates or highlights, we always start with Eric, who gives us an update on runtime.
Hey, Dr. Max, thanks.
Hey. Right.
Yeah, so it's August, so it's a little bit quiet, but I wanted to point out a few things. CF Deployment's released, I think, a couple of major versions since the last CAB call. Version 10 and then version 11 shortly thereafter. The CLI, they recently released version 6.46, and they're working on a patch release with some login refactoring changes in there as well. CAPI has continued work on sidecar support, and they've been talking also to the Eirini team about what it might look like to support side-by-side operation of Diego and Eirini in the same environment. Along those lines, the networking team has done some internal reorganization, and they're exploring some solutions that would support routing for environments that have both Bosch and Kubernetes deployed components. So again, we'll see what the Eirini folks talk about, but they've lifted some of the routing components onto the Kubernetes cluster itself. But if we're looking to evolve existing environments, there'll have to be some sort of bridge. And then finally, Volume Services had a post on CF Dev recently where they announced they're deprecating the EFS volume drivers and corresponding broker, so they can put more weight behind both the existing NFS broker, which has a lot more sophistication, and also so they can start focusing on other ways to support Eirini and Kubernetes integrations. And then finally, for Eirini, stay on the call. You hear a lot.
Excellent. Thank you, Eric. Any question? I guess non-Eirini for Eric. Monitoring the chat also. If you want to post things there, you can talk. Okay, so I guess no questions. We'll go to. Do we have anybody from Bosch PMC? Morgan? No. Okay. I guess this is going to be a short call when it comes to the updates. I'll try to get some info from them post facto, so we'll get there. For extensions, we have one kind of big announcement, and it's that Stratos finally graduated. Seems like it was a late bloomer. Actually, it's just the process. I think Neil was hesitant to put it there, and he, of course, had some vacation. But it's finally there. It's graduated. I'll send an email. You know, if you want to know anything about Stratos, he gave an update the last cab, the cab before this one. And it's very interesting because now they support, or at least they're working to support Kubernetes, and he should demo that. Neil, you're on the call. You want to say something? Anything? Any new updates?
No new updates. It's good to graduate finally, so we're looking forward to that. We're doing a lot of work on extensions, so refactoring the way that Stratos is built, making it easier for people to extend it for the Kubernetes bits you mentioned to be published and more easily used by other people. We've got a few sessions at the upcoming summit, so if people are interested, then come along then.
Excellent. Thank you, Neil. I think there are a few people with background noise, so if you're not speaking, it might be good to go on the background a little bit. All right, cool. Thank you very much. All right, so, and then besides that, we have, I think, a few other projects that are retiring and also have graduated. I listed them, so check those out. So let's give as much time as we can for Eirini. Let me first ask Jules, my colleague from IBM, if he wants to say anything. He spearheaded this whole Eirini thing. So maybe Jules, do you have anything you want to say before we pass it to the teams presenting? I'm sure you want to say something.
Max, you know I'm always really hesitant to talk. But actually, on this occasion, I am not going to talk. Herr Jules and Mario, I think, will do a much better job than me. But I'll take responsibility for the overall idea. If it's bad, and they can take responsibility when it's good. How about that?
Excellent. Thank you. All right. So, okay, my Alexa is having trouble connecting. All right. So,
all right.
So we have
no pressure.
Yeah, we have two talks. One by Jules and Mario, who are doing the nitty-gritty details on Eirini, and they'll give an update on essentially Eirini itself and where it's going, where it's at, and what to expect, and so on. And then we'll have a talk by Vlad of SUSE, who is gonna give us an update on EiriniX, which is an extension project for Eirini. So let's get started with Jules, the second Jules, Jules from IBM, and Mario from SAP. I don't know how you guys want to do it, so maybe you want to share your screen?
Yeah, we'll do it from Mario's.
Oh, sure.
Excellent.
He will share and we'll switch. Awesome. All right, so welcome to the Eirini update talk, or the pre-update talk, before the actual update talk that will be on the next summit. So my name is Jules. I'm working on Eirini together with my colleague Mario. And we'll first start with a recap, just to let you know what Eirini is, what it does, what we did before the last Eirini update. Then we'll talk about all the things we did in the last few months since the last Eirini update till today. And finally, what's up next and what will come up next. All right, so Mario will start with the recap now.
Right, so I'm gonna keep this pretty quick. Basically, I'm gonna tell you what Eirini looked like up till the previous summit in Philadelphia, and if you happen to be completely oblivious to what Eirini is and what it does. It's basically bringing the CF push experience to Kubernetes. And how do we do this? Well, this is how CF kind of looks like today. We have Diego on the right, the big blue bit. And what we want to do with Eirini is basically this, just put Kubernetes instead of Diego and have Eirini be a small little mapping layer between Cloud Controller and Kubernetes. So what did we actually do up to that point? Well, if you do a CF push, then Eirini will create a stateful set in Kubernetes, which is going to represent your app, and then Kubernetes will actually schedule an instance of that app. If you CF scale, the same thing. We just change the replicas of that stateful set, and Kubernetes will bring up all of the instances that you want. And if one of those instances happens to crash, then it'll bring it back up. So how did we actually do the transition from droplets to images? Well, the truth is that we actually have everything related to droplets exactly the same. So staging is the same. And the difference is that we have BitService serving as a registry, which uses the droplets to actually serve images to Kubernetes. So how do we do this? Well, you do the CF push, it really gets the staging request, and what it does is use that staging request to create a job in Kubernetes, which will create a pod, and that pod is actually running the staging process. So it will produce a droplet, and when it's done, it will put it back in Cloud Controller so BitService can have access to it. But how does actually BitService use the droplet to create the image? Well, we just use the droplet as the topmost layer of the image, and the rest of the image is what we call the EiriniFS, which is a small little wrapper of CF Linux FS3 this time around. It was 2 back at Summit, but we upgraded. And this will also contain a little binary, which will actually show later, which will actually run the droplet the same way that Diego does it. So it's the same, absolutely same code. And how does Kubernetes actually reference this image? Well, it gets a URL and it's pointing to BitService. So it will actually treat it as any other Docker registry out there. Cool. So next we did logs. We used Fluentd, which is a data collection tool. We deploy it on every single node in the Kubernetes cluster. It will actually look at the container logs from the runtime and send them over to Logaggregator. So when you do CF logs, it's you get the logs of the applications. We did routing using an event-based API in Kubernetes, which will actually send over events to things that we call emitters. And for example, if you have an app instance up and running, that will generate an event. We'll get that event in the route emitter, and using the app's IP, we'll construct a register new route message in the Go router. So you can actually route to your app. And if that app dies, that also generates an event, and the route emitter will deregister that route. So the Go router doesn't route traffic to apps that can't handle it. We did events, crash events in a very similar way. Again, if an app crashes, it will generate an event, and using that event, we create a crash event in Cloud Controller. We do this because when you do CF app, Dora, for example, it lists the instances, and this will tell you which instances actually crashed. Lastly, we did metrics, and we used to use Heapster service for this, but that got deprecated, so now we use metric server. It works similarly. You just get the metrics from that server and emit them to Doppler. So when you do CF app again, you can see how much your application is consuming. And I think that was pretty fast. So let's move on to new things.
All right. So a big topic and what we focused on was security in the last month since the last update. So let's take a look what we did there. First thing was connections. So basically having secure connections to all the components Eirini communicates to. So this is basically the cloud controller and the BitService, the registry part in that case. So we added TLS from the cloud controller to Eirini and also the other way around. And also we added TLS to the bit service registry, and we also added basic authentication. So you need a user and a password to actually pull images from the bit service registry part. But we also focused on the CF application side. So previously we were able to reach other applications within the Eirini namespace directly from your application that you pushed. And also you were able to reach the Kubernetes master and the API and everything. And we just don't allow that anymore. So you cannot reach any other application or the Kubernetes master or the API or anything anymore. Of course, you can still reach other applications through the internet, but direct access is not possible until we don't apply the container-to-container networking, which will be a feature in the future. All right. Next thing we focused on was secure staging. We had one staging job, and which was performing the whole staging process, which is download builds. So download the app bits, build the droplet, and upload the droplet back to the blob store. And that happened all in one pod. And the problem was that this pod had all the secrets. And so what we did to improve that, we split up the staging in 3 different steps. Each step is happening in a separate container. So first container downloads the app bits from the blob store. It provides it to the next container, which is performing the build of the droplet. And this is then handing over the droplet to the next container, which is uploading it back to the blob store. So that way the build step doesn't have any access anymore to any secrets. Next part is the rootfs patching. Now you're able to dynamically patch the rootfs. Let's say you're the operator of your Cloud Foundry and Eirini Kubernetes cluster, and you want to use a specific rootfs version. And what you would do as an operator, you would update your Helm chart with the rootfs version of your choice, and you would perform the Helm upgrade. And Helm would update the rootfs version label on Eirini and the bit service, which will cause a restart of these components. And now all applications that are newly pushed to Kubernetes will have the new rootfs version. But there are, of course, also the applications that are already scheduled by Eirini. And there's the 3rd component that comes in here, that's the rootfs patcher. So it waits till on an upgrade till the bit service is back up again. And then it updates all the applications with the right rootfs version and makes sure to restart them so that all applications pull the right image from the bit service. And this is something that we will demo quickly, and this will Mary perform on his computer.
Right. So here we have Cloud Foundry deployed with SCF and Eirini on the left, and on the right we actually have some applications already pushed. And what I'm going to do now is show you the rootfs that's actually being deployed when I get all the Zoom things out of the way. So if we edit this pod on Eirini, we can see that in the labels we have a rootfs version, which is version 81.00. And just so we can compare the actual rootfs, when we swap it, I'm going to SSH that container. I'm going to do a SHA-256 sum on this file. And we can see that it's 1cc 159 something something something. This is actually the launcher which launches the droplet. So let's say we're an operator and we decide that version 81 is insecure now. It has some vulnerability, and we want to actually change that version. So how do we do that? Well, we're going to open up the values file that we use for Helm for deploying Eirini. And I've put here the rootfs version up top. So this 81 is now insecure. Let's change it with 84. which we know is a good version. So if I Helm upgrade my deployment, it will actually do the things that Jules said. If Helm works today, it does. So it's going to restart bit service. We can see it's restarting. It's restarting Eirini. And you can also notice this rootfs patcher job over here, version 84, which restarted our containers on the right. So they're already restarted. So if I go into Dora again, we can see that the version is version 84. And if I SSH to that Dora and do SHA-256 sum on lifecycle launch, you can see that now the SHA is B177 something something something. So it actually does apply the new rootfs. Now there is a small bug that we actually caught 2 hours ago before this cap call, and you actually need to manually restart the applications to get the actual rootfs. Bonus points if you actually spot the bug. We won't go into it, but yeah, we're working on fixing that. So back to the presentation.
Okay. Next part is container security. What we wanted to do is to have the same container security configuration as Garden has today in Diego. And for that, we had a table with parameters that Garden already compared to Kubernetes. And based on that, we had to apply it for Eirini 2. And we had like 3 parameters we had to focus on. So the first one was the seccomp filtering, enable it, which is basically a whitelisting for syscalls. The next thing we had to enable in Kubernetes was that a container cannot get any new privileges. And finally, we also had to enable disk quotas so that we can set disk quotas for containers. Then the next part I want to talk about is the resource limits. We just mentioned the disk quotas. So far, we hard-coded the disk quota to 2 gigabytes, but we just today started the story to make that configurable via CF-CLI, and CPU and memory is already configurable by the CF-CLI, so you can set it however you want. Previously, we had the Kubernetes default, which is limitless. So next part. Scalability. We did some scalability testing, and actually we had 3 deployment scenarios. 2 of them were performed by us, the Eirini team, and a third one was performed by a guy from SAP, and he actually did the biggest environment with 250 nodes and 40,000 apps that he pushed. On a SCF-based deployment with Eirini on GKE. And we had one scenario with a Bosch deployed CF that was pointing to an external Kubernetes cluster on GKE. And we also did some performance testing with a SCF-based deployment with Eirini on IKS. For the Bosch deployed scenario, we had 1,000 apps that we pushed on 21 nodes. And for the IKS scenario, we had 200 apps that we pushed on 10 nodes. So of course we had some issues. We expected that. And some issues we fixed right away was routing. We had problems that the routing was scaling and many routes were dropped. You were not able to reach your apps anymore. Also, metrics did not show up, and the log aggregator kept crashing so that no logs showed up. But these 3 problems were fixed, and the remaining issues you basically have on Helm upgrades or upgrades on Kubernetes itself if you update master or worker nodes. So you have some larger downtime on your applications. And also the routing for some apps might be gone. So we have to investigate there a little bit more. Second one, which was actually fixed this week, I think yesterday, we had a short period of 502s on upgrades. So when you tried to reach your app, you saw 502 for a few seconds, and then you were able to reach your app again. And that was because of the asynchronous update that we do, that Eirini does with the routes. Then a not Eirini related issue we had, but it's a Kubernetes issue, that you cannot push more than 14,000 stateful sets to a Kubernetes cluster. So Kubernetes prevents you from doing that. And finally, we discovered that bit service was the weakest part in performance testing. So it has this high load, it has to deal with all the blobs, and also it needs to turn all the droplets into OCI images. So bit service was a bottleneck there. All right, that's what we have about scalability and all our updates. So what's next, Mario?
Right, so Eirini recently had its first inception, and one of the things that we decided we wanted to move forward to is migration, so getting people migrated from Diego to Eirini. And this is something that we haven't done yet. We, like Eric said previously, that we have been in talks with Cappy to make this a smooth transition, and we have several ideas on how this could happen. For example, using a flag in the CF-CLI to tell Cloud Controller, this app is for Eirini, this app is for Diego, or using isolation segments for Eirini. But again, this is something that we are moving towards and something that you would have to look forward to. Another thing that we're working on is making Bosch and Eirini work together more nicely. Now there is a community maintained Bosch release for Eirini. We would rather make Eirini kind of independent from how you deploy CF. So just plug in into your Kubernetes cluster, and it wouldn't matter if it's a Bosch deployed or a containerized CF, it would just work. But this is something we're still spiking and working towards. And that's pretty much it. I just wanted to mention that we have regular releases on our Eirini release GitHub repo. They're mostly weekly, but not always. So that's a place where you should go if you want to actually try out Eirini, and there's of course instructions on how to do that. We have also office hours happening every first Monday of the month at 10:30 a.m. Eastern time. I'll post a link to this blog post so you can get the Zoom link, or you can just go over to Eirini Dev in the Cloud Foundry Slack, so you can get that link from there. So if you have any questions, you want to tell us how much you like Eirini or hate it, or you just want to chat with the team, we'll be happy to have you. And lastly, of course, it's not just us. This is the entire Eirini team, and we're to reach them on Twitter and, of course, the Eirini Dev Slack channel. So that should be it. Thanks for sticking with us. And if you have any questions, now's the time.
Yeah, thank you very much, Mario and Jules. If you have questions, speak now or paste it in the chat, and we'll try to repeat it for you.
Mario, I sent you a private message asking a question about one of your slides. It looked like it was probably old information in it.
Do you want to repeat the question then?
The question was that he showed there was Go 1.7 and you bumped to 14.
Yeah. I'm
assuming it's an old slide.
It's an old slide, yeah.
Okay.
I think it's just an arbitrary version even. I think the main point is that it's just CF Linux FS3 and whatever is in there, it's. But we'll update it for the summit. Thanks.
Cool. Any other questions?
This is all extremely fascinating news and developments. Thanks, everybody. This is awesome.
Thank you.
Sweet. All right. Anything else? Because we have a good agenda of other things to get to, but I want to thank you again, Mario and Jules, for a great update. I really like the first few slides where you kind of showed how it actually works, but with pictures. So that's kind of nice for everybody. And good update. So I guess you guys, as you mentioned, you will have an even deeper dive at Summit. So if you want one more reason to go to Summit, this is it. And then that way you can actually spend some time and talk to them and see them in person. So more opportunities. Okay, so last call for questions. Okay, excellent. So thank you guys. Let me pass it to Morgan. He actually joined a little bit late, but he pasted some updates on what's going on in Bosch. Let's give him maybe 2 or 3 minutes to give those highlights and maybe field some questions. Hey, Morgan.
Cool. Thanks, Max. Sure. Sorry, good morning. I think the most interesting thing is we've cut a new director, so 270.5 and CLI version 6. One of the big things which we've heard a lot is folks have a deployment and then they try to upgrade that deployment and something fails, and then they want to do recreate or start or stop, and then their entire deployment gets rolled back. And then they're like, hey, Bosch team, what the hell? Why did you just undo all the stuff I did? So as of those versions, there's a new flag on the CLI, which is no converge. And if you add that, it will actually only touch the thing you're trying to touch and not roll back the entire deployment. So we really want to get a lot of feedback on that and see where it breaks and where it doesn't break. And if it's working for folks, we expect it to help a lot, but I'm trying to get folks to know about it and use it.
Woohoo!
Thank you. Yeah, it's been a long requested one. The other interesting one is a lot of development teams will upload Bosch DNS or something in a runtime config, and then their pipelines will run cleanup -- all, and then the next time they run, they will break because we cleaned up releases that were specified in a runtime config but weren't actually used in a deployment. So as of that releases that are included in a runtime config but might not be included in a deployment will be marked as in use. So you won't actually delete them when you're cleaning up all your old blobs. And then the last kind of exciting one that folks have been asking for is being able to configure the length of your certificate expiration when you are saying Bosch create env, so in the director's manifest. And then there's a few other notes in the doc if people want to read it, but I think those are the highlights since I know there's a packed agenda.
Excellent. Thank you, Morgan. And waiting for the entertainment. I guess there's still some Bosch fanatics out there. So good to know.
The smart ones.
So if you have any question for Morgan, this is your chance. Otherwise, we're going to pass it to Vlad. Let me see if there's anything on the chat. Okay, nothing on the chat. Thank you again, Morgan. All right, so the next and the last talk, I guess, but not the least, is Vlad. I'm going to mispronounce your last name, so sorry about that. But Vlad is from SAP. He does a lot of things. If you've never met him, he's a fantastic person to meet. He is going to talk about EiriniX, latest project. Tell us about it, Vlad. What's going on?
Hey, thanks, Dr. Max. Just a correction, I'm from SUSE, not SAP.
I'm so sorry about that.
No worries. I'm just going to quickly talk about EiriniX. I'm sorry I don't have a demo. Ettore, who works much more on EiriniX than I do, he had a laptop emergency. Something died with the thing, and now he needs to fix it. So I'm just going to quickly tell you what EiriniX is and then point you in the right direction if you want to start building stuff or contribute to the extensions that we've already built. So we wanted a way to extend what Eirini does without putting more load on the Eirini core team. They have a lot on their plate, and we wanted to support some other features that really don't need to be inside of the core Eirini project. Good examples include PERSI support, so the ability to mount persistent volumes in an application. So you can imagine PVCs being created and then being mounted in the containers of application pods created by Eirini. We also wanted to have application SSH, so CFS SSH to an app. And we also discovered that we could improve the way that we do logging with these extensions. So if you're building, I'm sorry, there's some background noise. I hope everyone can hear me okay.
Yeah, it's pretty good.
Okay. While trying to build these extensions, we realized that there's a lot of common functionality that we could put inside of a library, a Go package. So this is what EiriniX is. It's a bunch of code that helps you write extensions specifically for Eirini by writing a lot of the code that you'd have to repeat. So the main mechanism we use to extend what Eirini does are Kubernetes webhooks. We use these to mutate the pods that Eirini creates. And we also have watchers. So you get notified when an application is being created or deleted. So this common functionality is very useful when you're trying to extend, right? So for example, these admission webhooks, we use them for PERSI support. So what happens, as Mario and Jules described, Cloud Foundry, the cloud controller, and all of the internals will tell Eirini to create an application. Eirini will go to Kubernetes, it'll create a stateful set, and then a pod will be created in Kubernetes. What happens with the extension is that we tell Kubernetes that we want to register a webhook so that whenever a pod in a specific namespace is created, we want to be notified. So, well, not just notified, we actually want to mutate that definition. So once the pod wants to be created, but before any containers are created, Kubernetes will call the extension first, and we have a chance to mutate the pod before any container gets created. So in the case of PERSI, the mutation is that we add volume mounts to the pod. So we have this Eirini PERSI broker that actually works with Kubernetes storage classes. So UCF create a service which results in a PVC being created for you. You bind that to the application, and then this extension will mutate the application pod and add volume mounts. So this is how it works, and the library kind of does everything for you. It sets up an HTTP server, generates certificates, it creates those certificates as secrets in Kubernetes. It creates the mutation webhook configuration that Kubernetes needs. All of that. It also sets up watchers if you need that. So all you need to do is just start a main, main.go, and then import this this package, write a few lines, and then you're ready to extend what Eirini does. Okay, so I think I can move on from how does it work and just point you to more resources. The library can be found at SUSE/EiriniX on GitHub. We have 3 extensions so far, PERSI and logging. They are already done, so you could actually test them out. PERSI, like I said, is for supporting persistent storage in your apps. It works hand in hand with the Eirini PERSI broker. Then we have an extension for logging. This replaces the FluentD solution that's in Eirini Core. What we do here is we watch for the application pods that get created by Eirini. And then we use the Kubernetes API to stream logs and then forward them directly to the logregator. So we kind of act like a logregator agent that specifically understands how to read Kubernetes pods from Kubernetes. And then finally, we're working on SSH. This is in progress right now. So, you know, if you want to help out, we'd love that. And two more things. There's a blog post that Ettore wrote, which takes you, you know, top to bottom. It explains every step that you need to do to write your own extension, starting from a main and finishing with a Helm chart. So end to end, you can follow that that tutorial and build your own extension. Finally, we have a talk at Summit, at the Europe Summit. Ettore will be there. We'll demo all of these things that I've talked about. And yeah, if you want to learn more, please join us there. And that's all I have. Sorry if it was short.
No, that's fine. I mean, this is a good update. Thank you, Vlad, and I'll pronounce your last name, Iovanov of SUSE.
That's perfect.
Apologies again. All right, so let's see if you have any question. I have one question for you, but let's see if other people have questions for you. Any questions for Vlad? So Simon Moser, you can't speak, or do you want me to say it for you?
Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you. Simon, go for it.
All right, I was trying to speak earlier too, but it sounded like it was broken. Okay, so the question for Vlad that I'm having is, this is great, and it certainly super helps to speed up, you know, all the features into Eirini that we need. But do you guys have any kind of plans to eventually move that back to mainland Eirini at one point in time, or is this going to become a permanent solution as you see fit?
So I think Jules can also chime in here. I've had a bunch of talks with him about this. We do want to do that. We at some point want to move EiriniX over, but we do acknowledge that it's going to take some time. We want to make sure that these extensions work correctly first, and then you know, after they get some mileage, we can move pieces over. So I think the long-term vision is that, yes, at least EiriniX would become part of core, and then all of these side projects can stay as side projects. For example, Percy and SSH. Perhaps logging can actually replace Fluentd in core.
Okay, makes sense.
The only other thing I'd add to that, I think that's a perfect answer. But one of the reasons EiriniX I think is really, really good and important is it means all the different teams potentially in Cloud Foundry can ship their things in a way that actually, even though it's called EiriniX, it's nothing really to do with Eirini, right? It's like it will work with any application, however you push it, whether it was Eirini or not. So if you use like the Percy broker that they have, you now have the Percy functionality whether or not you use Eirini. So now Percy can be this kind of decoupled, useful component. So I think what we're hoping is all these, like at the moment we've got these projects to fill the gaps, but I'm hoping that all the various Cloud Foundry teams over time will start to ship kind of on top of something like EiriniX and probably EiriniX. So I think this is like super cool, and we definitely want to have it be supported in core eventually when it stabilizes.
I was more, the only other thing that I was questioning is, so for example, SSH to me today is kind of like a core functionality of
right.
Cloud Foundry. In order to do that now going forward, I have to get, you know, Eirini base plus EiriniX plus the SSH extension. So I have to deploy you 3 things instead of 1 as I do today, which is from an operator perspective more complicated. And you know, that's my main concern.
Right. So yeah, this is exactly what I mean. At the moment, we've got Eirini SSH, this kind of separate project. What I'm hoping will happen, and we've started some discussions about this, is that Diego will ship an Eirini SSH, right? And so it will be the core teams will expose the core features in this way. And then hopefully what will happen is we'll have basically a CF deployment like thing, which will give you the tested set of extensions that all work together in one package. So rather than like the Eirini repo having to have everything, in the same way as right now in Cloud Foundry, you've got all these different BOSH releases that work together. Hopefully you'll have all these different EiriniX extensions that work together.
One more thing, I think that's perfect, and I think the goal is we don't want to keep we want eventually all of these to move to the Cloud Foundry org, and it just I just thought maybe we could have a meeting of sorts at Summit to discuss specifically this, maybe. I think everyone's interested in this. Yeah.
So I think this is interesting. I think it's big dreams, but there's certainly an aspect of it that could probably move fast. These are extensions to the runtime, so maybe people like Eric and Yui are the right person to talk to. But some of those that could be extensions outside of the runtime, I'd be happy to consider them in the PMC extensions, especially if they can be self-contained and we can maybe move them to incubator and so on. So there's lots of discussion there, but this is great. I don't know, Eric, you're on the call. Do you want to chime in on this in terms of how to move forward? He might have dropped too, so I don't know. Let's see. Yeah, he might have dropped. All right, but I guess Summit is gonna be a good place to figure out how to move forward on this. Any other questions? I have one question that's a little bit different than the discussion having here, but any question or comment on this particular discussion about extensions and how to organize them and move forward? No? Okay, cool. So my question, I guess, Vlad and Jules, is with this extension mechanism, is there any part of Eirini that would not be extension? Because it seems very generic, where you could essentially enter, like you could put your extension in between Kubernetes and Eirini and change things. So what are the kind of things that you would not want to have extensions for?
I think that's a really good, that's an important question, and we're figuring out that line. One good example of that, the logging that you see there, we've started discussing merging that into the core Eirini, because we currently have a logging approach in the core Eirini that's not as good as this extension. So we're hoping to replace it. And I think like there's like a core set of things that we just like they should be in the core, and we won't do with the extensions approach. And then things that you add on. And I think part of it will be kind of Conway's law. If we can form a team around a thing, then if that team ships as an extension, we don't have to be PRing one mono repo or something. But I think it's kind of probably the honest answer is it's going to mostly, it's one of the main reasons for extension is so that we can scale, right? The number of people that can contribute when we all have like these small teams that we like in Cloud Foundry. So I think that's going to be part of the lie. If there's already a team around it and already context that we don't want to have on the core team, then it should be an extension. But then something like logging, that's something that feels like part of the core. So I don't know if that made sense. It's not a complete answer, but at least that's the rough thinking.
Yeah, I mean, I guess also you have to consider, the mechanism for testing and CI and all this good stuff that needs to happen in order for something to be valid.
And I think this is one of the things I think Cloud Foundry has done really well, like with the relent thing and CF deployment. We had the kind of all these different things that are developed independently, and like Garden, for example, we don't run cats in our CI at all. We just have tests for Garden, but then every time we push a new Garden release, it gets picked up by relent, makes its way into a new CF deployment, everything gets tested together. So yeah, I think there's lots to talk about there. And one thing we're trying not to do in Eirini is kind of own all of Cloud Foundry, but on Kubernetes. It's like, we can't, like, it's too big, we can't do that. So we want to just own like a core thing, kind of like the analogy is Diego. Like Diego doesn't test all the different releases, it just does Diego, and then Relin tests them all together. So I'm hoping that Relin will be able to step up and take on some of that kind of cross-component testing.
Yeah, maybe start small with the tools like the SSH and stuff like that, and then eventually in a few core, and then eventually you can see how to scale it, right?
Right.
Okay, cool. Any other questions to Vlad or Jules or the Eirini team? I mean, we have, I think, about 6 minutes left. So this is your chance to ask some questions to the team. Otherwise, plan to come to Summit, as most of these folks are going to be there. No questions? Going once, twice? All right, thank you, everybody. Thanks for the update, and we will see you in The Hague, in the Netherlands. Take care, everybody. Cheers. And we'll have a cab there, okay? So live. It'd be even more fun. Bye.
Cheers. Bye-bye.
Cheers.
Bye, everyone.
Cheers.
Cheers.